Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 6 of MRS TV. My name is Autria Godfrey, and let's continue to hear about all the latest in materials science at the 2020 virtual MRS Spring Fall meeting. Stay tuned. As we kick off day 6 of the live events, today we have the Women in Materials Science and Engineering presentation, 2 Symposium X keynote talks, and the Von Hippel Award lecture by Cato Lawrenson of the University of Connecticut. We also have 2 snack chat sessions with Elena Levine today, virtual interviewing at 12:30 p.m. Eastern, and being persistent, managing rejection at 7:30 p.m. We still have 1 spring meeting symposium holding a live session today. That spring meeting session is... And our fall meeting live sessions today. We've got quite a bit to cover today, so let's kick it off with an exclusive interview with meeting chair Michael Rowe. Michael, thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you. It's an honor to be here and be able to work in MRS and do the volunteer service.
You know, there is a lot of work involved in being an MRS meeting chair. Why did you volunteer for the role?
You have to remember as a scientist that we create our own community and we do it through our own hard work. And part of the thing about science is that it's designed to be shared. It's designed to go out and then feed upon itself and bolster all those other scientists out there. There's a reason we come together at conferences, and that's because we are a greater global team. To do that, somebody has to step up and actually start volunteering. And actually, each of us have to do it in our own part, whether it be a meeting chair, an MRS, or just reviewing an article for a journal you get asked to do, or working in your own local chapter and volunteering in a university recruitment effort. Basically, we all have our part to play. And when I was approached by MRS to be a meeting chair, that was my shoulder being tapped to step up and contribute in a way that I previously hadn't.
In addition to a large number of technical symposia today, we also have a Symposium X talk from Daniel Anderson of MIT and the Von Hippel Award presentation. What are you looking forward to in these talks?
The medical emphasis, personally, and the integration and the nanotechnology and nanoparticles into some of that. I hope to actually see some more of that in the future. My original dissertation work back in the day was on gold nanoparticles and the use of them in environmental monitoring and VOC analysis monitoring for public health, actually, and industrial hygiene. And so whenever there is a mixture of the different disciplines and sciences that traditionally were more in individual silos to come forward and actually help us as a community, as a global community, I get excited and interested.
Your fellow meeting chairs are primarily employed in academia. You come from industry, however. Tell us about the importance of MRS meetings to researchers who work in the industry.
Sure. Yes, I've spent the last 12 years in Toyota doing research there. If you were actually to come to Toyota and see my research labs, you would actually think it's a major research university. Wet labs, equipment, all that type of stuff. Once you walk into the laboratory door and leave the office space, it looks like a university research institution. And So that's one of the things that most people never really see, because obviously companies are not as open all the time as universities, but we live a very similar life. You'll see numerous talks from companies at the MRS conference. I myself have presented at it more than once, and actually one of the people from my team are presenting this year. We're a little quieter in industry than they are in academia or in the national labs necessarily in the greater community of MRS, but we are definitely here, we're present, and we're interested, and we're excited, and we're also looking for new and great ideas that we can help move forward and collaborate and partner with people, and to, again, go back and to my original point, to make the global community a better place.
Your time as meeting chair has certainly been unique. What have you learned along the way that you would pass along as advice to future MRS meeting chairs?
Flexibility and patience. MRS is a great institution to work with. They're a wonderful organization. The people there are top notch. I've had nothing but really great experiences. More than once, I've actually been on another continent calling back to be like, so when's that meeting? I'm I don't know which time zone I'm in, and I don't know if I'm a little late. And the MRS staff has always stepped up immediately and supported me in that way. But then COVID hit. And these meetings aren't just put together quickly. It actually, the kickoff is 2 years prior. So it's a long and drawn out process to try to bring the highest quality to the game as we can. And once COVID hit, everything derailed. We went virtual in record time. I couldn't believe what the MRS staff was able to accomplish in such a short amount of time. But all of a sudden, the well-oiled machine really had to struggle through at certain moments, and they came through, and it was great. But patience and flexibility at that point. What are we doing now? What are we doing now? How can we make this better? How can we move forward? How can we come up with appropriate countermeasures so that everyone can still have that MRS conference experience?
Michael, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you too, and I hope everyone has a great time.
Today, we will continue to highlight those universities and organizations that are dedicating so much to furthering the field of materials science. Let's take a look at a couple of them.
The Center for Anaphase Materials Sciences is a US DOE Office of Science user facility. We specialize in a full range of doing materials science, especially related to nanomaterials. We do synthesis, characterization, theory, and imaging, and that's pretty much our core capabilities at the CNMS. And we have world-class instrumentation for doing that, and most importantly, we have expert staff. The user facility means that we welcome users, both domestically and internationally, from any institution, academia, other national laboratories or government laboratories, as well as industry, to come to our facility and access unique instrumentation to conduct their science.
There are a lot of places where you can do nanofabrication, but one of the things that I really think makes CNMS unique is the staff expertise. The staff actually go through the processes with you, help you develop recipes, train you on the equipment, and they train you to the point that you're independent users, so you have the latitude to do your research at your own convenience, but you're never left alone. My research focuses on a suspended low-noise silicon nitride platform. These are devices that have a thin silicon nitride membrane that we use for a variety of applications. Everything from thin nanopores, where we do translocation experiments, to in situ transmission electron microscopy. Recently, we've been exploring new applications ranging from dielectrophoresis and incorporating photonic readout mechanisms into the devices.
I mainly specialize in monochromation aberration corrected scanning transmission electron microscopy, and specifically electron energy loss spectroscopy. So I use this to study a variety of materials. We look at phonons, we look at plasmons, we look at molecular vibrations, we look at band gaps, optical properties, and electronic structure in quantum materials, organic materials, and energy materials. The advantage we have is we have combinations of energy resolution, but then we also have high spatial resolution. So we can look at all sorts of things that are happening at the nanoscale and spatially distinguish between different spectral features. This has a lot of applications towards optics and photonics, especially in things like plasmonics, where you have high localization of electric fields to nanostructured surfaces and geometries. We can look at these localizations and we can map them out directly.
I'm working on scanning probe microscopy to look at functional material parameters with a very sharp probe which goes in contact with the sample. This tip in reality is only 30 nanometer wide, so you get very small, high-resolution functional information about the material. So some of the materials we are looking at are 2D van der Waals layered materials with electromechanical response. That means they expand or contract when you apply an electric field. Those could be coupled with other 2D materials like graphene to build up new devices with unprecedented functionality. Another set of materials we're working is electrochemical energy storage, where we can see how the ions are inserted and how redox processes happen by the volume change of the electrode, which can also be probed by scanning probe microscopy. The benefit of that is finding out what's happening at the nanoscale. What happens in one grain versus the grain boundary, these are all questions with which scanning probe microscopy lets us visualize.
My research focuses on rheology and dynamics of polymers. In my research, I use several different experimental tools such as rheology, dielectric spectroscopy, scattering tools, and computational tools to study the molecular motions of polymers. Potential application of this research is really help us to understand how we can make better polymer electrolytes for batteries. And for the polymer deformation research, the potential impact is on the processing and manufacturing of polymeric products.
The experience working as a postdoc at CNMS is really great. I get to work with a wide variety of very advanced techniques in scanning probe microscopy. I can study my materials in vacuum, in air, but also in a glove box. Many of the advanced techniques that I'm using every day have been developed here at the Center for Nanophase Materials Science, meaning that they're not always commercially available. And I get access to not only those techniques, but also the know-how from the staff members.
The CNMS is really there to augment the science that you're doing at your home institution. We provide access to capabilities that the U.S. government has put in our facility that you may not have at your home institution. We want you to look for the expertise that you need in these fields, and sometimes they're very sophisticated methods that we may have available to users. We want you to look beyond your in-house capabilities and come here to perform cutting-edge science, cutting-edge experiments that you can't do any other way. That's really what we're looking for. We welcome people from any institution in the United States and from international institutions as well. We want you to come here and experience the ability to perform your experiments on some very, very sophisticated capabilities that we have in the center.
The Joint Lab is located here at HKUST, and one of its important goal is actually to help accelerate the translation of discovery and invention from the laboratory into products or offerings that will benefit the community. The Joint Lab had been working for many years, in discovery, and in scientific research related to environmental health technologies. And usually in the discovery process, we are not only working in the laboratory, but also we engage major stakeholders, for example, government, non-government organization, in order for us to prototype, and field test this technology. The industrial partner is very important in helping us not only address what people need, but exactly what people wanted in the technology. Because in development of a technology, we should not only address what people need, but also what they really want.
My name is Hamilton Hung, and I'm the Chief Marketing Officer for Chip-Hua Industry Limited. Our background is in the air purification, water purification, and sanitization industry. So what we did is we collect all the marketing information, we seeking the need from all the sector, and then we derive a planning back to the joint laboratory to support Professor Yang and his team to initiate different kind of project
The joint laboratory is developing a series, of smart antimicrobial technologies that addresses emerging health concern, particularly how to control pathogens in the environments.
Well, this year we focused quite a bit on the what we call the MAP1 technology, which is a sustained, smart, multi-level surface disinfectant.
This project has been realized in the market right now. We have deployed massively in different industry, ranging from mass transit, public transportation, school, elderly home, and a lot of government facilities are now using this long-term disinfectant coating to protect against COVID-19.
A very important part of the product development is to solicit feedback as they test it in the field. And for example, going back to this coating itself, we know it's very effective in terms of killing microorganisms, but how does it behave in the environment? Is it compatible with cloth? Is it compatible with metal? So we have to test out many different substrates. And sometimes, for certain substrates, for example, cloth, if the feedback is that, hey, it doesn't stick too well, then we have to reformulate and try to bridge the gaps.
I'm Dr. Lam Ching Choi. I'm the CEO of Haven of Hope Christian Service, also the chairman of Elderly Commission and executive council member in Hong Kong government. Basically, as an NGO, we provide aged care services and also the hospital settings. So we serve as the testing ground for all the technologies being developed in UST. Our colleagues will form working groups with the colleagues and professors, students in UST. And we basically provide a setting, and we will discuss with the university colleagues and what exactly our workflow is and how will this kind of technology improve our service. So it is a very good collaboration.
Today, it is a part of practice to think about safety, from concept to testing to actually laboratory compilation of the product, the whole development process. Safety is a very significant consideration.
It is a very important collaboration. From the angle of developing technology, it is essential. And I would say since we have this kind of collaboration, we were involved from the very beginning, and we are part of the ecosystem of building this kind of technology. And it will make the technology more user-friendly, and also for marketing, it will be more successful.
Today, we also got the chance to sit down with the director of IBM Research, Dario Gil, to talk about innovation efforts at IBM. Dario, thank you for joining us. Congratulations on being named to deliver the plenary address Fred Kavli Distinguished Lectureship at this meeting. You lead the innovation efforts at IBM. That covers a wide range of fields, of course. Tell us about how your organization cultivates an atmosphere of innovation among your researchers.
Well, first of all, thank you again for inviting me today, and I'm just delighted to be able to give the plenary lecture at MRS this year. And yes, IBM Research, so let me tell you very briefly, IBM Research has been a division of IBM conducting fundamental work on pushing the boundaries of information science and technology for 75 years. So since our origins, when we started out of Columbia University, to today, where we have 3,000 scientists and engineers all over the world, I think what is unique about our community is we're composed of material scientists and physicists and mathematicians and computer scientists, so all sorts of backgrounds, but everybody that comes in here comes with the lens of looking at the world with the lens of information. about new ways to store it, process it, to compute differently. So the way we foster this, our spirit of innovation is through scientific and technical excellence, and through essentially word of mouth, like colleagues, exceptional people attract other exceptional people, and always making sure that we have an environment where we're pushing really the boundaries, like doing right now, pushing the boundaries of AI and quantum computing as an example.
So much basic research is now conducted in academic and government labs. How do your researchers interact with academia and government labs? And how do organizations like the Materials Research Society help to foster those relationships?
So at IBM Research, we've always had a very, very proud and deep connection with university and national laboratories for that matter. IBM Research started right adjacent to Columbia University. If you look at our laboratory in Zurich, adjacent, right, and collaboratively working with ETH as an example. So we've always had that long history. But let's recognize some facts of what has changed over the last 50, 60 years in the world of research. 70% of the R&D budget of the United States is spent in the private sector. That's a really interesting figure. So what that tells me is that the scientific and technological capacity of the nation is very distributed. And what that means too is that we got to be able to bring the best of the expertise that is in the private sector, in academia, and in national laboratories. And we're very proud of those collaborations. To give you just two quick examples. With MIT, we have a $300 million artificial intelligence laboratory that we jointly design, we jointly operate, and we jointly execute all the research projects. Or to give you in a different context with the quantum computing, 3 of the 5 quantum information science centers that the Department of Energy announced earlier this year, $1 billion of investment, we are part of them, 3 out of those 5 national centers. So it is part of our DNA to collaborate broadly with the rest of the science and technology community.
So your talk is titled Scaling the Scientific Method to Enter the Era of Accelerated Materials Discovery. What will you be discussing in your talk?
I think we're witnessing a revolution in the world of computing, and it's driven by the convergence of classical computing and high-performance computing, the world of AI and AI systems, and the world of qubits and quantum computing. So I say that the future of computing is bits plus neurons plus qubits coming together. And the consequence of this revolution in computing that we're witnessing right now is going to be the opportunity to accelerate scientific discovery. So I will be exploring what is new about our all and favorite method, scientific discovery, or formulating questions, studying, performing experiments, and from there generating empirical evidence to complete the loop again. And what changes as a context of our advances in AI? What changes as a consequence of our advances in quantum computing? And the bottom line is we have a unique opportunity to accelerate the scientific method. And if what used to take us $10 or $100 million in a decade to develop a new material, we can compress it by a factor of 10x. Well, that's really exciting and game-changing, and I'll be exploring that.
Your work and your talk cover both AI and quantum computing. How do those two fields complement each other, and what needs to be accomplished to realize the promise of these?
Yeah, indeed, they are different forms and approaches to representing information in unique new ways. So what we've seen, for example, in AI is not only are they exquisitely good systems to be able to use deep neural networks as means to do classifiers, right, and build those kinds of, but we've seen with the advent of generative models that now we can actually start doing chemistry in a completely different way than we had been accustomed historically with our empirical and more theoretical approaches of it. A much more data-driven approach to be able to do things like synthesis and retrosynthesis. So AI is changing how we do it, and then quantum is changing it as well, because we know that chemistry, of course, obeys the laws of quantum mechanics, and the fact that now we can build machines that behave according to quantum mechanics, like quantum machines, makes them uniquely suited to simulate chemical processes. So in the world of simulation, over time, quantum is going to make a huge difference to perform calculations that we couldn't do. So each one adds a different element to the equation. And I think the most exciting opportunity is what happens when we combine them. So AI will advance a lot. Quantum will advance a lot. Classical computing and high-performance computing will continue to make a huge difference. But my thesis that I'm very interested in is when you combine the strengths of each, what can you do? So that's what I will be focusing on.
Dario, thank you for your time today. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks again for tuning in. I hope you have enjoyed our show. But remember, we will be back again tomorrow with more exclusive material. See you then.
Thank you.